Okay, great. Then we'll call to order this joint meeting of the Finance and Personnel Committees. I think we'll do a roll call for Finance Committee and then for Personnel, and then we need to get a chair for Personnel to fill in tonight.
Okay, roll for Finance Committee. Wilkos.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
Nairo.
Here.
Lorman.
Here.
All present. And for the Personnel Committee, Wilkos.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
And Nelson.
Here.
Hopefully I have that right.
Okay, does Personnel want to tap someone to be the chair for tonight's meeting? What was that?
Now they're working?
Well,
All of them, like the one.
they were working in here, but apparently not on the live stream.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Just let me know when you're ready.
You should be good to go.
Okay, great. Well, I wanted to welcome the, well, for me, the members of the Finance Committee, but Katie, welcome to you too on Personnel. Kendra has attended many of the Finance Committee meetings, so she is aware of how we work. Alder Jackson, Alder Lorman, consider watching some of the meetings of past Finance Committee gatherings. You'll find them all on YouTube if you haven't already been there. I would especially recommend that you check out the budget kickoff on July 19th, the budget meetings on September 15th and 29th, and the budget hearing we had on November 10th. For finance, we typically start at 6:30, and I would like to finish around 7:15 to give some time to prepare for the council meeting at 7:30. And we do follow Robert's Rules of Order, but I don't expect anyone to go over that. For each decision item, we'll need a motion and a second discussion. And I do ask that everyone raise their hand to be recognized, or otherwise signal that you want to be recognized in the discussion. For committee members, if you want to make a motion or a second, you don't need to raise your hand. You just speak up. And for the benefit of staff, we're still learning everybody's voices. It's a good idea to state your name, your last name when you make a motion. One item I would like us both to include on our agendas for the next time we meet, I believe is the idea of consolidating our two committees into one. This has come up before by me. Consolidation of committees is one of the recommendations from our strategic plan, and personnel and finance, because of the significant overlap and the things we talk about, that's a good potential candidate for consolidation. So think about this for our next meeting, and we'll return to that. Okay, the next item of business is approval of the minutes from the April 18th, 2023 Personnel and Finance Committees meeting jointly. I'm going to seek a motion for approval, and Alder Jackson, I will let you know that since you're the pivot point on these two committees, being a member of both, it would be super helpful if you'd be willing to make motions on behalf of both of the committees. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the April 18th meeting?
I approve the minutes.
All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second for finance?
I'll second.
All right, and
actually, let me roll back a second. Kendra.
I don't know that I'm on first. I'm trying to pull
I
up the
just,
comment.
no, you're not. You're
I'm
not.
I was just trying to pull up and I was like, wait a minute,
Nope.
I don't think I'm on
You
personnel.
were briefly, but you were
Taken
yeah,
off. I was
yes.
just looking through.
And District 4 is the third member. So
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Katie, you're going to be the,
Oh, I see. Okay, okay. So you want me to chair?
you'll have to chair. So we
Okay.
have a motion and a second for finance. We have a motion for personnel. Would you like to second?
I
for-
will second for personnel.
Okay. Any discussion about the April 18th minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor for finance of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Personnel?
And do you want me to call for discussion or no? Since there's no discussion? Hearing none. All in favor for personnel signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Okay, the next item is under miscellaneous, and it's consideration of potential recommendation to council of a signing bonus initiative for Middleton police recruitment. Would anyone like to make a motion to make a recommendation to council? That way we can kick off the discussion and hear from the chief.
I will make a motion that we recommend to council to approve the allocation for funds for signing bonuses.
A second emotion.
Okay, so finance, we're good. Personnel, we need a motion in a second.
I'll move that we approve.
A second emotion.
It's either you or
You're going to
me.
be busy tonight.
Okay, so with two motions, then we can open it up for discussion. And Chief Ellenbrand, would you like to say a few words and help us make our decision?
Can you check to make sure that's on?
Yeah, I've learned.
Thanks.
Screen is good, right? Can you hear me? Screen is good. I'm still turning up all the mics. But good, go for it.
I think I put a lot in the memo. I tried not to be too close, but I tried to detail everything and why we're making this recommendation. This is really unprecedented times right now in law enforcement. We're seeing low numbers for recruitments. We used to get about 300 applicants. We're averaging about 24 right now. That was our last recruitment, and we're not the only department. In fact, we're doing very well compared to other departments looking to hire officers. There's a lot of recruiting going on. As you saw in my memo, we're losing 3 officers to the Madison Police Department that offered signing bonuses. They also offer more opportunities. The Sheriff's Department is also offering a very lucrative package, high pay, but also a transfer of sick leave and vacation leave. We're very fortunate. We have not lost any officers to the Dane County Sheriff's Department, but many other municipalities have. So this is our way of trying to stay competitive. As you saw, we'll be hiring 6 officers. We got 2 conditional officers or 2 conditional offers right now. One of those officers has to go through the academy. So we're looking at an 18-week academy, 14 weeks of field training afterwards. They don't even count towards our minimum staffing until April or May of 2024. So being down 1 or 2 officers is pretty significant for our department. Being down potentially 6 or more we're almost on the verge of a crisis. So the Police Commission approved a recruitment for certified officers only, and they also are recommending a signing bonus anywhere from $1,500 to $5,000 to be competitive and also hopefully to recruit other officers who are already certified in the state of Wisconsin or in other states to come to Middleton and work here. Certified officers will allow us to quickly get them through our field training program, 14 weeks, and then we'll be able to use them as a backfilling our vacancies. We have ARPA funds that were dedicated to every single law enforcement agency in the state of Wisconsin last year by Governor Evers. We had earmarked $45,000 of that towards a body worn camera program, the project that we had approved in this year's budget, but we also received $35,000 in grant money from the state of Wisconsin at the end of 2022, which will cover about half of that. So we have some ARPA funds that we can use towards our signing bonuses, but it won't cover everything. So we need a little bit of money from our operating budget to also cover that. And we anticipate at a minimum, and Bill, help me out if I misstate this number, but a minimum with our vacancies, about a $50,000 savings right now in our operating budget. And I'm looking anywhere from $4,000 to $12,000 out of our operating funds to help fund this signing bonus.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Discussion or questions for the chief? Yes.
Thanks for this, for bringing this to our attention, Chief. Do you know what kind of signing bonuses Madison is giving? And if I missed it in the memo, I apologize.
They're from 2,000 to 4,000.
Okay,
So we're going a little bit higher than that, hopefully to
yeah,
maybe recruit a Madison officer to.
fair, yeah. Thanks.
That, I have a question in line with that. Do you think that this is enough?
Right.
I mean, is there?
I would love more.
Yeah.
There's some agencies out of state that are offering signing bonuses of 50,000 to 75,000. We don't need to be there. But I would love to go more than this to really catch people's attention, but I'm trying to stay within the ballpark of what other agencies locally are
Okay.
offering. So
And Madison is the highest in Dane County.
as far as all I saw was $4,000 was the highest.
Okay.
I have a question about I think it's the third paragraph on the first page of the memo, Bill. So it says the change, this would eliminate the need to send the candidate to a police academy and would allow us to immediately start them in our 14-week field training program and hopefully on solo patrol within a few months. I just want some explanation and basically assurance that that is not tantamount to requiring less training for our officers, because
Absolutely.
that's how it sounds. And I just want to make sure I'm
Great question.
understanding.
Absolutely not. We're not lowering our standards. We're not reducing the amount of training that we would offer any officer. It's still, even if they're a certified officer, we have to go through our field training program, which is 14 weeks. They just would not have to go through the 18 weeks police academy because they're already certified.
Okay.
But we're hoping that they come with experience. And we hired an officer from the town of Madison who had 23 years of experience, who quickly went through our field training program. The big joke in the department was actually he was training our field training officers. He had that much experience. But for the most part, we stick to that 14 weeks field training. So they get to know our policies and procedures and just to know our operations locally. But it's very close to 14 weeks, but most of the time it is 14 weeks of field training that we put through every officer.
Don't trip, Larry. Okay, thank you for that explanation. Yes, Alder Jackson.
I have a question, Chief. What is, are there qualifications for this bonus? To meet the requirements for this bonus?
Yep, they need to be a certified officer, either in the state of Wisconsin or in another state. If they come from another state, they actually have to take a test through the state of Wisconsin to show that they're certified or that they can be certified in the state of Wisconsin. So the first qualification is that they have to be certified, and then the signing bonus will be based all on their training experience. So if an officer is just certified last year, they have limited experience in law enforcement, they would not get a $4,000, $5,000 signing bonus. It'd be closer to that $1,500 to $2,000 range. But if I get an officer who has 23 years of experience in another agency, like the town of Madison, I'd look at a signing bonus of about $5,000 to attract them to Middleton.
Any further questions or discussion? If not, Alder Wokus, I wonder if you would amend your motion to put in a specific not to exceed amount and the source of the funds. And Chief Hillenbrand, if you would assist in crafting that motion, it would be appreciated. So is the request for $20,000? I'm looking now,
Yeah,
Bill, at
currently
the
with
second.
our vacancies, we're hiring former officers. Again, we have conditional officers for 2. We have 4 vacancies. If we were to go with $5,000 for each of those 4 officers, that'd be the $20,000. So not to exceed $20,000 in signing bonuses.
Okay, and the source again would be,
The law enforcement ARPA funds, and then what ARPA funds will allow us to go up to $4,000 depending on their certification, whether it's in the state or out of the state. And then if it's a $5,000 signing bonus, I would just need $1,000 from our operating funds to cover that additional $1,000
From the cities or from yours?
for my operating account, the police department's operating.
okay,
Okay.
but it could be a not to exceed amount of $20,000 to come from city operating funds and the LE ARPA funds.
Yes,
I think
exactly.
that's, so.
Then
Alder
I
Wokus.
move that we approve, recommending to council the allocation not to exceed $20,000 to be allocated from city operating funds and the law enforcement's ARPA funds for use of signing bonuses.
Alder Nelson, you're okay with that change too?
I am.
And then Alder Jackson, you were the second on both. You're okay with that change?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Did you have another question?
No.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion. All those in favor for finance signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. The ayes have it for finance.
All those in favor from personnel signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Good luck.
The next item is for personnel.
Could you pull the agenda up?
Oh, I'm
I'm
sorry.
just seeing a
It's
motion to adjourn.
adjournment.
Oh, pardon me.
That's okay.
Entertaining a motion to adjourn personnel.
I second the motion.
So you have to make the motion.
I make the motion to
Adjourn.
adjourn.
I'll second that. All in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Personnel is adjourned.
All right, so finance stays in order. And we took just enough time in that discussion to get us to the right time to start our meeting, so that's good. Okay, we don't need to do roll call minutes of the April 18th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting. Can I get a motion to approve those?
Yes, I'll second.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, so Alder Vocus moves, Alder Lorman, you second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of the April 18th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Next, we move on to the audit of the bills to be paid. Members, I want you to know, I'm going to be passing around, each one of you got printouts of the unpaid invoice report and the credit card charges. We need to I'll date this and sign it, and I'm going to pass it on for each of you to sign as well. And I guess it'll wind up over there with
Did
you.
you say that we got one of these?
It'll be in your mailbox, and you should have received an email from Michelle Marks.
I did get an email.
Yep.
Yes, okay. And you
Yep.
said I was thinking paper copies, so.
Oh, yeah. Well, but I'm just sending around my paper copy for all of you to sign. This is just something we do at every finance committee meeting, although we don't have a credit card every time. So with that, I will do something we also do every meeting, and that is ask Bill if there are any amendments to the,
No additions or changes tonight.
okay.
Just sign it after your name.
Yeah, just sign it after my name, and then I'll pass it on to my neighbor. Okay, so any comments, questions for Bill? About the printouts we received? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the audit of the bills to be paid signify, wait, we don't have a motion.
Don't have a motion.
I need a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you. I'll second that. All right, so all those in favor of approving the audit of the bills to be paid signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Moving on to our presentation from Finance Director Bill Burns. Before Bill gets started, I just wanted to assure all of you that when we get to our budget discussion later this year, it's going to be a little easier than it was for us last year because we had a referendum in play. And so we weren't, it was almost like having to prepare two budgets and then find out which one we could go with. And I really, really encourage the new members. I think Alder Jackson's coming back. I encourage you to take the League of Wisconsin Municipalities Local Government 101 course. It's really good. Do it in person if you can. It's right here in Middleton. I did not attend the Dane County Cities and Villages Association local government. It's similar to that, but it seems to be
That
more of an
is-
introduction to Dane County.
Yeah, and that is new this year. So this is the first time it's being offered. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the presentation, but definitely would encourage people to attend and provide their feedback on that.
Okay, great. I definitely will plan to attend that. Okay, so Bill, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for those that I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Bill Burns. I'm the finance director and assistant administrator for the city of Middleton. Been with the city for about 7 years, and just put together some comments on how the finance committee operates and some of the main duties and functions of the finance committee. I'd also be happy to meet with anyone individually if you'd like to talk more about city budget, finances, or anything else that I can help to answer about the city. And please, if there's any questions as I go through this, please let me know. What I thought I'd go through this evening, talking about the roles of the committee, looking at a calendar of what types of business we normally expect to come up during certain months of the year, do an introduction to the city's budget structure, timeline, and process, overview of some of the key financial policies that are the purview for review for the finance committee, and then talk about some of the other resources, including the league and the Dane County Cities and Villages event that Chairperson Hanairo just mentioned. So looking at the roles of the finance committee, audit of the bills, which we just went through, that's a function that's done at every meeting under city ordinances. The finance committee recommends and the council approves the payment of bills. So that's the listing that is provided to you. And that's part of our internal controls and checks and balances that the finance committee and the elected officials see all of that information with where those payments are going out. The Finance Committee plays a key role in reviewing and putting together budget recommendations to the council, as well as any amendments to the budget throughout the year. Those are reviewed by Finance Committee and recommended to council. We review financial statements. Our practice has been is every quarter to provide an update on the general fund financial statements. The general fund is the city's primary operating fund. And then at the end of the year, we prepare our audited financial statements and our annual comprehensive financial report, and the auditors will come in to provide a presentation of those statements to the Finance Committee. They'll have an opportunity to ask questions, and then the Finance Committee would make a recommendation to accept those statements to the council. And for 2022, we've completed our audit field work. We're working with the auditors now on doing the preparation of the final document. We'll review that. We'll go through their review process. And then the plan is for the first meeting in June to have the auditors in here. You'll get an opportunity to meet them and present the financial statements. Most other business that goes to the council, I should say any business goes to the council that has a financial impact would be reviewed by the Finance Committee. So things like bid processes, quotes for services, agreements and contracts that have a financial component. So as you'll see this evening, that many of the items that are on the council agenda are also on the finance agenda because of the financial component. So finance would have an opportunity to review those and recommend to the council. The city also has several financial policies that I'll touch in a little bit later, and those would be subject to review for the Finance Committee, again, making recommendations for council for adoption. One of the things that's spelled out in the city's investment policy is that we'll prepare quarterly reports on the city's investment portfolio, and those are reviewed by the Finance Committee each quarter. The Finance Committee also takes the lead in preparing for and approving debt issues for the city, which we typically do once a year for our general capital borrowing. And then also any requests for tax increment financing assistance and reporting for tax increment financing. It's also under the purview of the Finance Committee. So a lot of the work within finance is seasonal and follows a calendar year cycle. So I put together the next few slides just to let you know in a typical year, when would things typically come up. We have our quarterly investment reports and quarterly financial reports. In January, we do an annual update of the city's tax increment financing models. Often that update is done at a committee of the whole meeting or a retreat that is held. It can also be done at the Finance Committee. In February, we review the prior year capital projects, and there needs to be authorization from Finance Committee and Council for money that is unspent for active projects to be carried forward into the following year. So we typically review those in February, and then that would be going to the council and then authorize that to be carried over to the following year for expenditures. Same thing for any of the American Rescue Plan Act or ARPA carryovers if needed. And Depending on the timing, we may start our capital borrowing process early in the year in February. And that's what we did this year to take advantage of both being able to lock in interest rates at that time, as well as provide money for cash flow for active projects. So that process started in February with the sale resolution and the award of the debt in March. Coming into April, that's when we would review the first quarter investment and financial reports for the general fund. And we see the preliminary year-end information from the following year for the general fund. That's right around the time of our audit field work. So we've got the audited numbers available and make designations on fund balances. So unspent money in the general fund at the end of the year may be designated for certain purposes, and that would be reviewed by the finance committee, recommended to council. Coming forward to May, normally we do a review of financial policies. I've discussed with the chairperson that we have several policies that we would like to review this year. So we may start that in May and then continue that in June and through the rest of the year. Sometime in May or June, we start looking at the budget process and putting together the budget development calendar. And then also one of the items that's on the agenda this evening is a review of the annual American Rescue Plan Act report. In June, as I mentioned, we'd have the presentation of the financial statements from the auditors, and then tentatively planning on the second meeting in June to be our kickoff for the budget season for this year. In July, we'd have another round of quarterly reports for investments and financials. In some years, we've done the budget process kickoff in July, depending on timing. This year, I'd recommend we try to do that in June if we're able to, just to allow a little bit more time in that process. In August, potentially looking at capital projects mid-year updates and if there's any decisions or modifications that are needed mid-year. And then the budget really becomes the focus in September and into October in developing the budget recommendations. And then the budget would go to the council in November for adoption, along with the property tax resolution for the following year. And then in December, there are usually some follow-up items related to the budget, which could be the annual salary resolution that would set salaries for the next year and various fee adjustments and other items needed to implement the budget. But we'll have separate meetings on the budget, but just at a very high level, wanted to mention that the city's budget is organized in a variety of different funds under governmental accounting. So separate pockets of money where we have revenues and expenditures coming in, and then the revenues minus expenditures is the fund balance that stays within that fund unless it's specifically transferred by the council for another purpose. So our largest fund is our general fund. That is our main operating fund, and that is where the majority of our tax revenue comes in from the property tax. That's where most city departments are, including police department, administration, finance, EMS, various departments. We also have several special revenue funds. Those are funds that have at least a large individual revenue source that provides a significant portion of funding. So some examples are our tourism department, which is funded by hotel room tax, or the library, which although they do receive an allocation from the city's general fund, they also receive a large portion of their funding from Dane County. So that's accounted for in a special revenue fund. And we have various special revenue funds for different types of projects and grants, including the American Rescue Plan Act funds. Those are in a special revenue fund. We then have a debt service fund, which is just used for the paying of principal and interest on debt. That is primarily funded by the property tax and is one of the two funds that receives direct property taxes, the general fund and our debt service fund. We have various capital projects and TIF or tax increment financing funds. Capital projects funds are primarily funded with borrowing, although we also have grants and occasionally some other revenues for those projects. TIF districts receive tax increment from development projects, and that goes into the TIFs and is used for economic development. And then finally, we have our enterprise funds, which are accounted for more similar to a business. They generally have customers or ratepayers that are paying for the majority of their costs. And the examples are our water and sewer utilities, golf course, airport, stormwater utility. And I just pulled one slide from our budget information for 2023. This is a summary of the approved budget for all city funds. And in total, revenues for 2023 are expected to be about $70 million. The The largest portion of the property tax levy, as I mentioned, is for the general fund at about $15 million. The rest of the property tax levy goes for debt service. And then we have various other combinations of revenues, borrowing, ratepayer payments for those other funds. So just talk a little bit about our budget process. Typically, we do a kickoff, as I had mentioned, in either June or July. That provides an opportunity for staff to present some information to the Finance Committee and Council about what the situation is, what we're expecting from the state budget, preliminary ideas of what our revenues may look like for the year. And then the Mayor, Council, Finance Committee provide direction to staff in putting together their budget requests. We'll then issue budget directions to the departments, and they'll work on putting those requests together, usually due by the middle of August. Once the department requests come in, mayor, administration, and finance staff review those requests, and we've prepared scenarios in the past, usually 2 or 3 options for the Finance Committee and Council to consider. The Finance Committee has then held budget meetings to meet with the departments, ask questions, hear from the departments, their justification for their request. And then typically the Finance Committee has selected one scenario as kind of the lead option, and then they start to make adjustments from there. Once the Finance Committee is comfortable with a budget recommendation, that is used for publishing a public hearing on the budget. And then after a notice period, the council has held the public hearing. The council would consider any additional amendments to the budget, and then they finally approve the budget and the tax levy. So that process really starts in July with department work. Their requests submitted in August. Finance Committee is primarily involved with September and October meetings to review, and then review by the entire council in November. That's just the timeline that we went through. Financial policies, we have several policies that have been adopted and that govern the various aspects of operations of the city, and some of the key financial policies are listed here. The first is spelling out the budget policy, and there's also language in the city's ordinances about that budget process. We have financial policies that cover things like capital assets for how we do our accounting for capital assets, debt management, fund balances for those remainder of funds that are left over at year end, as well as the city's contingency, guidelines for our investments and purchases, risk management related to insurance and how we handle claims, and then tax increment financing policy for reviewing economic development requests from projects. So I think what we would plan on doing is this year identifying some of those key policies, and then at subsequent meetings over the next 3 months or so, trying to review maybe a couple policies at each meeting when we can get into more detail and make any updates that would be needed. And then finally, just wanted to mention some other resources. So as the chairperson was saying at the beginning, the League of Wisconsin Municipalities has a local government 101 session. They're offering that in person at Madison Marriott West, which is actually located in Middleton here on June 2nd. And they also have a couple of webinar dates available. New this year, the Dane County Cities and Villages Association is going to be hosting a session for newly elected official orientation with speakers from both Dane County Cities and Villages, as well as several departments, including different county departments. There should be additional information coming out within the next day or two that has the schedule and information to how to sign up for that. That is planned. The date has been set now, confirmed as May 31st, and that'll be in the evening. I think it's a 5:30 start time. I also wanted to call your attention to a couple of key financial documents. One of those is the city's approved budget. That is on the city's website, the link in the packet. There's also a hard copy in the mailboxes for the newly elected alders. And if anyone else needs a hard copy, please let me know. It's a big document, so I just highlighted a couple sections to start with. The transmittal letter, the fund structure, I think does a pretty good job of going through the different purposes and types of the city's funds. And then finally, there's a glossary in the back that may be helpful in referencing the various terms that we use both in the budget and the Finance Committee meetings. And then the other document is our annual comprehensive financial report. These are our annual audited financial statements. But in addition to just all of the tables of numbers, and there are a lot of those, there's a couple sections that I think are useful that provide more of a narrative discussion. There's a transmittal letter that highlights some of the key things that happen during each year. And then there's a management discussion and analysis section in the beginning of the document that goes through a narrative discussion of what the different financial statements mean, how our accounting works, and again, what are some of the key reasons for changes during the year. So that would be a good place to start. The most recent document is the 2021 statements. The 2022 copy of this report is what will be presented at that first meeting in June. And then, as I said, I'd be happy to meet with anyone, either in a group or individually, if you'd like to just spend more time going through the city's finances, budget process, or anything else I can help introduce you to.
Thank you for that. Good, very good overview, Bill. One question I would like to ask is, can you talk to the members about some of the awards Middleton has won for its budgeting processes?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, as your finance director, I'm a member of the Government Finance Officers Association, which is a national association of finance professionals. They have several award programs, including one for excellence in annual financial reporting. And our financial report, the annual comprehensive financial report, has qualified for that program for the past several years. In order to do that, we have to meet all of the requirements for the different sections, kind of the best practices in putting that together. We submit that to the GFOA, and then they have independent reviewers that review those statements and go through, make sure you're in compliance with all the standards and make recommendations for improvement that then we incorporate into the following year. So I think that that's a very good achievement and recognition for the city that we're following best practices for transparency and financial reporting. GFOA also has a similar program for budget documents for the distinguished budget presentation. That is not something that we have applied for yet, but it is something that we've been discussing that we would like to submit and try to qualify for that program. One of the items that we need to incorporate is being able to tie our strategic plan into our budget document. And with the city having a recently adopted strategic plan, I think this is an excellent time to look at making those incorporations and then submitting and hopefully qualifying for that program as well.
Thanks. Any questions for Bill? Comments? I know it may seem a little overwhelming, but trust me when I say a year from now, you will look at it differently. You'll understand it all a lot more. So don't be concerned. And definitely do read through the transmittal letter and the fund structure pages of the 2023 approved budget. Did the new members get printed copies of?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, check out that letter that's in the beginning. And I also recommend that you check out the budget requests from 2022. Those are on the budget page on the city's website, because the document you have has all the tables and all the numbers, but I think it would be helpful for you to see the budget requests that the finance committee originally received, because that includes the narrative explaining what each department wants to do. So it gives more context than the numbers themselves. So I encourage you to look at that. And you will want to bookmark the budget documents page, so you'll be able to find it in the future. And in case Alder Jackson and Alder Lorman as new members, in case the committee of the whole concept is foreign to you, I think Bill mentioned a committee of the whole meeting. That's just when the council gets together to discuss things, not to act, but to spend a little more time hashing through stuff. And it's those meetings when the council president, Katie Nelson, will lead the show.
Madam Chair, just point of information, I'd equate those more to like a workshop format. So the council has the opportunity to meet as a body in a workshop format to talk through policy issues before anything gets ready for a formal hearing or action.
Yep, thank you. Okay, any other comments, questions? Hearing none, let's move on to our business. Thanks again, Bill, for putting that together. We have two resolutions. The first one is Resolution 2023-18, streetlight conversion to LEDs to save money and reduce carbon emissions. This comes to us from the Sustainability Committee. Council deferred action in March because we wanted to give the Public Works Committee a chance to look it over. They have, and Sustainability has recommended it to us again. Motion to approve.
This is Wilkes. I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2023-18 regarding streetlight conversions to LEDs.
All right, and I will second that. As a former member of the Sustainability Committee, I'm very happy to second that. And thank you to Alder Wilkes and the Public Works Committee for improving the resolution originally drafted by the Sustainability Committee. So yes, Larry.
Yeah, I'm going to recommend some very minor edits on the last page, so page 27 of the packet. In the third paragraph. Just before the word ordinance near the end, insert the word city, then strike the word section, replace it with chapter. And then in the second line of that same section, after ORD, insert SEC period. I just want to make it more in conformance with the style of city ordinances and reflecting the existing city code.
Okay, so put SEC after 33.08
No,
before ordinance section 33. Okay, got it.
I will amend my motion to approve resolution with the changes suggested by council. City attorney.
Okay. I've had a request from our sustainability coordinator to make a slight change to one of the whereases. It's number 4. And it's replacing what's in there now about reducing electricity usage by at least 50% by the year 2050. That is part of council's ordinance, or I'm sorry, resolution from 2018, trying to get us to 100% renewable energy. But the request, if the members will approve, is to actually drop in there the commitment in the same 2018 resolution that the city will meet 100% of its electric needs through renewable energy resources by 2035. So it's a difference. One's talking about the reduction of electricity, and the other is talking just the change that we would make is to substitute the commitment to meet 100% of the city's electric needs by renewable or through renewable sources by the year 2035. So in essence, it's substituting one element of the 2018 resolution for another one. There's not an error in this one, but the request is to change it to the one that's a little, sounds more ambitious, which is to get 100% of the city's electric or electricity through clean renewable sources by 2035.
I guess I just see that as outside the scope of this resolution, but I have no
Okay.
problem including it.
Well, I mean, I want to do what the members are comfortable with. I could go either way.
I agree. I mean, it's one thing, just operating outside the scope of, what the city currently has. I think we should go back and look at that if that's what we want to change, which I'm perfectly fine with. I think it's just, we need to be consistent. So we need to stick with what the city has already set forth. I mean, obviously I applaud any aggressive moves to try to get in that direction.
Yeah.
And
And doing one will help us get to the other.
it's an opportunity to restate our commitment to that is what I see it as. It's just another opportunity to commit that. And that's fine if you want to include it. I just don't think it is in the purview of this resolution, but it's fine.
Okay.
Either way.
Now I need someone to make a decision. I'll make an executive decision to keep it with the amended motion that you've made. Alder Jackson, you seconded. Are you okay with Alder Wilkes's change to original amendment to make the changes which City Attorney Beckler has suggested?
Yes.
Okay.
I second it.
So, any further discussion? If not, then all those in favor of approving resolution 2023-18, streetlight conversion to LEDs to save money and reduce carbon emissions with the changes suggested by Attorney Beckler, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. The resolution passes. Moving on to our second resolution, resolution 2023-26, relinquishing acceptance of DNR Recreational Trails Program Grant Award for the Pheasant Branch Conservancy Trail Underpass, Trailhead, and Parking. This comes to us from the Plan Commission and staff. Can we get a motion?
I will make a motion that we approve the resolution for 2023-26, relinquishing the acceptance of the DNR Recreational Trails Program Grant.
All right.
I second it.
Second it. And just for the record, there are two J's now, Jackson and Nairo, and I was the second on
I did get that.
Alder Wokas's motion before, and I approved that change. So sorry about that. I'm gonna have to, and I can't even do JA to do J. Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. And I know Abby is here. I totally understand the need to relinquish this grant award, but I'm so disappointed that we have to, because frankly, I don't know if the new alders are aware, but Century Avenue Bridge is the worst bridge in Dane County. And it's on the list of top 10 most traveled structurally deficient bridges in Wisconsin, according to the American Road and Transportation Builders Association. And I would really love to see the county and our county supervisors do whatever they can to move this forward faster. But I understand there's nothing we can do with the funds right now. We want to remain in good standing with the DNR. So I reluctantly accept this proposal.
I have a quick question for Abby and Sean. Is this for Century Avenue? I guess I'm not going to ask you to go on the record and say for sure going to happen in 2024, but that's a projected timeline, correct?
For the bridge?
I
Yeah.
think it's 27.
Or was it 2028 for the
Yeah,
bridge?
so the bridge is scheduled for replacement in 2027.
7, shoot. Okay. But the road itself, 2024, parts of the road, what's the,
I think my mic. So sorry about that. Could you repeat that?
oh, yeah.
I was distracted by my
So
own
parts of the
microphone.
road in 2024, is that?
No, we're planning some signal improvements
Okay.
at certain intersections.
Okay.
And then a full resurfacing in 2026. So by the time we have the signals, the intersections, the road surface,
Then they'll get to the
then they can do
bridge.
the bridge. Now, that just worked out. I mean, the bridge isn't driving any of the rest of that,
Okay.
but it is stuff we can do in the meantime.
Any other questions, comments? All right, hearing none, then all those in favor of approving resolution 2023-26, relinquishing acceptance of DNR Recreational Trails Program Grant Award for the Pheasant Branch Conservancy Trail Underpass, Trailhead, and Parking, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the resolution passes. Moving on to agreements and contracts. We have 3. The first one is the agreement with DATCAP in the amount of $5,250 for services to enforce required weights and measures regulations. This comes to us from staff.
I will make a motion that we approve the agreement with DATCAP in the amount of $5,250 for services to enforce required weights and measures.
I did a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All right, discussion. Sean, you're here. So the frequency of inspections is remaining the same, but DATCAP is increasing the cost quite a bit. I mean, it's still a low dollar amount, but it's going up almost 90%. I recall at one of my first finance committee meetings last year, I asked when it was, I think, $2,800, why don't we bill the businesses for the service that we're providing? And the answer was because it would actually, or probably would cost as much or more to bill them and process payments as we're paying out. So it didn't make sense to do that. I'm wondering, can we revisit that sometime this year? Can we revisit that so that in 2024, which is when this $5,250 be paid, that we can bill the businesses and get reimbursed for the service.
I think it's really just purely a policy decision. For many years, we didn't really pay much attention to this. It was just a cost we paid. We're required by statute to have, weights and measures monitoring. We've always had DATCAP do that for us and just paid the bill. And so I think it probably just wasn't considered really. Since 2003, the cost has been $4,400 until this last year when they reduced the frequency of testing, in which case the cost dropped quite a bit. This year, they've taken a look at the cost and said, boy, we got to get from $400 a day to $750 a day. That's what we should have been ratcheting it up over the last 20 years. And they're doing it all in one jump. So that's why there's sort of a dramatic increase following the dramatic decrease, if you will. So over the past couple of years, we're really looking at a comparable of $4,400 to $5,400. But we certainly can recoup these costs through a fee.
Okay, thank you. Well, I suggest we come back to that question at a future meeting and we'll go ahead and approve this. For
Can I
now.
ask a procedural question since we're still learning today?
Sure.
Would this fall into those financial policies that we'll be reviewing over the course of the next couple months, or is this outside of the scope of
Yeah,
those?
I think this individual item, it does not fall within the scope of any of those policies. So I think this would be an individual policy decision related to this specific question.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask a question of Sean, if I could. When you do your renewal with DATCAP, do we need to let them know at that time if we intend to recoup these fees, or do we have time to wait on that decision?
I don't know that, but I do want to talk to them about this issue anyway, just to see what the process has been. I know statute allows for it. I don't know what the right process is for this. I think it's pretty straightforward though.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the statute is very straightforward. The general policy is very simple. If we don't charge the people who use this service, that means the general taxpayers pay it. And why should they? It may be small and it may not be a matter of massive amounts of revenue, but in most places, we do try to make sure that users of city services pay for those services. And in this case, it's being done by the state, but it's ours that they're doing. So they really should be paying, in my opinion.
Yeah, so it might come down to, I'd have to request some special sort of accounting report in the background to say who benefited to what degree. So when they're charging per day, a gas station may have 3 or 4 tests and a bakery may have 1. And I don't want to just take a bill and divide it by 20 users as much as to fairly apportion that.
So Bill, that was a great question because we want to make sure we're not, if we want to come back to this in the future, we want to make sure we have that opportunity. I noticed that the date by which we have to return the signed form is June 15th. Do we want to come back to this at our next finance committee meeting? And maybe that'll give us some time to figure out what's the process.
Yeah, I think that should be sufficient
Okay.
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then, would you like to amend your motion to defer this until our next meeting on the 16th?
Sure. I will move to defer this item until, when is our next meeting, you said? 5/16. Oh, that's coming up. Is that going to be enough time?
I think it's a pretty straightforward question. They
Okay.
deal with this all the time.
Okay. Do we need to do, okay, so we're just asking it as a policy question, not of how we would manage to charge this and what sort of accounting would be required.
Sean's going to find out what the process is and what data you might be able to get from them, because I wouldn't want to see us charging if we're going to wind up paying more to have somebody in Public Works do all the billing. I'm hoping the integration of our bill payment, what we're going to talk about at the end, the software with our financial software. I'm hoping that will increase efficiency, so it won't be onerous. But yeah, by the 16th, we would need to know what DATCAP says about the process, and then also if they're going to be able to tell you details like how many hours they spent or how much time they spent in a particular business, or maybe even their understanding of how other municipalities bill. Maybe they do
Right.
just divide it by the number of businesses.
Yeah, it seems to me at first that that would be unfair, but I think we could get a better answer than just that.
Okay.
So
All
I
right, so,
will move that we defer till May 16th.
and Alder Jackson, do you?
I second it.
Okay, all right, so all those in favor of deferring until May 16th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Actually, my apologies, it was Alder Lorman. You seconded.
Second,
And he.
second
approved that.
deferral.
Just keeping us honest for Bill's sake. Okay, moving on to the second of three agreements, which is the development agreement with 1630 NHPR LLC for tax increment district number 3 assistance for office building at 1630 North High Point Road. This comes to us from us and Plan Commission and council. And I understand the motion needs to be to approve this development agreement pending city attorney review.
No,
Yeah, I'm sorry if I may. Matt Fleming was having a conversation with the attorney for the developer this afternoon. I was copied on those messages. So the version in your packet does not reflect those latest changes.
okay.
I don't think any of them were substantive. There was a typo in the amount in the form of the TIF bond in Exhibit D. I think the digits for the number were correct, but where it was written out, it was the incorrect amount. The correct amount should be $216,004. And there were a couple adjustments related to the requirement for recording of leases on the property, as well as the language in the indemnification section, which I believe has been updated to follow the form of some of our other more recent agreements. So my understanding from the emails I was copied on is that the attorneys were able to work those out, but if can be approved subject to city attorney approval, we can make sure we get the final version of the document. And just a bit of explanation, if I could, for the process for TIF agreements. When we have a request for TIF assistance, we review that as a staff level first. Then that comes to the finance committee, and there's an opportunity to go in closed session to review the pro forma and review the financials. Finance committee makes a recommendation. The council would make a conceptual approval. And then once that conceptual approval is in place, then the attorneys begin working on drafting the document. And that's the step that we are at for this process. So it's already gone the initial review and the conceptual approval. And then this is putting the final agreement in place for these two projects.
Great, thank you for that. So can I get a motion to approve this development agreement subject to city attorney approval?
I will make a motion that we approve the development agreement with 1630 NHPR LLC, subject to city attorney approval.
I second it.
Thank you. Okay, discussion. I will say, and I mentioned this to Bill earlier, I'm still not comfortable with the assurances that we have that for the benefit of the newer members, when council approved this concept, this developer had asked for a lot more than the $216,000 that we're going to grant. And since they had the green roof, solar installation, and EV charging in there, the finance committee and the council agreed to stipulate that our funding would first go to pay for those sustainability features, because it's not common yet for all these development agreements to include those. Just looking at the TIF eligible expenses, if I had a project and we only got less than a third of what I had asked for. And it is not even enough to cover my underground parking. I'm going to put it to my underground parking. And so I just feel, and especially since earlier in the definitions, the definition of TIF eligible expenses specifically mentions underground parking, and it doesn't mention any of the sustainability features, which I think is a problem, Larry, that I hope you would look at when you're reviewing it. So Abby, I don't know if there's a way to change this exhibit C so that it's clear that we want the green roof, solar installation, and EV charging to get their allotments.
What Bill and I were trying to do here is to make sure that all of the costs were costs that were approved costs under the city's TIF policy. And with just the green roof, solar, soil contamination, building demo, and EV, they wouldn't come up with the full amount. So maybe, maybe there's an adjustment that could be made to the underground parking line to decrease the TIF eligible amount in order to provide more assurance that they would complete the green features. I have no indication from the developer that that's not their intent. They're showing that on all of their plan submittals that have gone through design review at the Plan Commission. They're very committed. They're LEED certified architecture firm. I have no doubt that they will, but if that would make the finance committee more comfortable to maybe look at decreasing that, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Bill.
When we review final project costs, we do typically allow that if costs end up higher in one TIF eligible item and lower in another, we will look at the overall total as long as they're all eligible expenses. These are put together based on estimates, and when they get into construction, sometimes things may cost more or less, but the intention is that all of the items are completed. The way this is drafted, because there was more in requests compared to available TIF increment, there's an adjustment line on the bottom to reduce the total down to the available increment. I think perhaps instead of applying that as one lump sum on the bottom, a portion of that could be applied to the underground parking, which would reduce that from 314,000 to a lower number. I think it would still be good to allow some flexibility so that if they do meet all of these items, but say the green roof comes in at 13,000 rather than 15,000, that they would still be eligible if they have $2,000 of eligible costs in another category.
No, I'm fine with that. And I completely want this development to be able to go forward. I want to make sure that we get what council had specified, which is green features on this great new building. So perhaps city staff can work with city attorney on the agreement, final language. And please do check the definitions of, or the definition of TIF eligible expenses, because it only references the underground parking. It refers to this exhibit, but by singling out underground parking for the definition, I think it sends a message. Okay, so do we want us to approve this now or come back to it in?
I think in order to keep the project moving, because they're hoping to start construction very soon here, I would recommend that it be approved subject to review by city attorney. I know Attorney Fleming is looking at this exhibit. I just got an email from him at 5:58 with a question about this exhibit. So I think we can incorporate that into the final edits.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the development agreement with 1630 NHPR LLC for tax increment district number 3 assistance for office building at 1630 North High Point Road, subject to city attorney review and approval. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. The ayes have it. Moving on to our third agreement. It's another development agreement. This is with Greenway Project LLC for TID 3 assistance for mixed use redevelopment at 8313 Greenway Boulevard. Get a motion to approve.
I will make a motion to approve the development agreement with Greenway Project LLC for TID number 3 assistance for the redevelopment at 8313 Greenway Boulevard. Boulevard. La la la.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to bids and quotes, we have one, this is the award of proposal to Bruce Company for seasonal downtown planter maintenance. I would explain to the members, the new members, that originally we did approve funding, proposal with Bruce to do some other landscaping work for the city, but they did not provide a bid for one item of the four, and that was ornamental bed maintenance, which I'm just giving you this background because I want to replace seasonal downtown planter with ornamental bed, because that's in fact what this is for. All right, so who would like to make a motion to approve this proposal?
I make a motion to approve the proposal.
Thank you. I'll second that. Okay.
Attorney.
Any discussion? Yes, Larry, thank you.
Yeah, some of the standard provisions in the Bruce Company's contract, nothing about the amount or what the work is, are troublesome. And so if you could make it subject to city attorney approval, there's a finance charge, which we don't ever agree to, construction lien in the wrong form, and only 10 days to pay, which is not normal in municipal finance by any means.
Okay. Alder Jackson, you're okay with the adding pending city attorney review?
Yes,
And I am too.
yes.
And I will mention, we did just approve a Bruce Company proposal last time when Larry may not have been here. So I don't think there's anything we can do about that, but yeah, good to know. I'm making a note. All right, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the award of proposal to Bruce Company for ornamental bed maintenance pending city attorney review and approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. We have 4 items under miscellaneous. I'm going to use my prerogative as chair to pick up the second, third, and fourth, and then come back to the first one. We have a discussion in council later, and I want to make sure we get these work items done. So the update to change orders for water utility work with street projects. This comes to us from the city engineer, and I don't think this is just an update, correct, Sean? You don't need action from us?
Oh, Larry's got a question off the bat here.
Oh, yes.
If you're going to approve it, the appropriate motion be a move to ratify the previous things that were done, since the work was done without prior authorization. Keyword being ratify.
Okay. Previous, I'm gonna say actions taken. And Larry, I'm sorry, if you raised your right hand, I would see it. So not that I'm telling you to do it,
Or
but
just shoot a flare.
I'm seeing a different view now of this setup. So, okay.
Sorry.
So Sean, update.
Yeah. So we've got a couple projects going on Elmwood Avenue. One is more of a resurfacing project, but some water main connections came up and they were a little bit pricey. They were in the water utility budget, but not coordinated with the project. So on the one hand, we anticipated that, but on the bidding part, we did not. So that was a change order off the bat. Fortunately, the downtown contractor is well set up and situated to do that work. So we added it into that contract to get it going. And in fact, that's, I think, all but done at this point. The other one on the downtown project was completely unforeseen. We thought we had ductile iron pipe, which is desirable. In fact, we had cast iron pipe in Elmwood Avenue, which is undesirable from a future break perspective. And so the timing, unfortunately, was just horrible. So I have authorization to go up to 10% of a contract value. But that pushed us over 10%. So it would have been desirable to go to the Public Works Committee and the Common Council to get authorization to exceed that. Now, this isn't exceeding a budget because the water utility has this budgeted too. But it is in addition to the scope of the work. It's in addition to the contract. But we were faced with following that desirable process, but introducing about a week and a half delay. And in a downtown project, I didn't think that the council would support that. So I decided to have the contractor move forward with all of this and give you an update.
Okay, great. And you mentioned it was $725,000 was the budget allocation for the water utility for water main replacement in these areas. But the total budget for water main replacement is $875,000. Is that correct?
Right, that included Lee Street and Clark Street, which is not actually being done this year. So that's budgeted money, but not allocated for either of these purposes.
Okay, very great. Any questions for Sean? Would someone like to move that we ratify the previous actions taken for water utility work?
I will move that we ratify the previous actions taken for water utility work on Elmwood and the downtown project.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to item number 3, update on American Rescue Plan Act or ARPA funds and annual expenditure reporting.
Yeah, this item is just an update, so no action or ratification needed. This is just for informational purposes. The city received just under $2.1 million in general American Rescue Plan Act funds. The council had put together an allocation plan with several projects for the use of those funds, and then approved budgets in, there was a small portion spent in 2021, but budgets for 2022, 2023. There's a tentative allocation for 2024, but subject to review and approval as part of the budget process. The sheet that you have here that's up on the screen is a summary of the now 2 annual reports that we filed with the federal government. The first report went through Q1 2022, and we just filed the second report that goes through Q1 of 2023. At that time, we had spent $362,302 out of the ARPA funds. And then you can see the information that's listed for what is approved in the budget for 2023, either as a carryover or as a 2023 budget. That's about 1.5 million. So the largest portion of those funds are planned to be spent this year. We'll do another update mid-year as part of the budget process and where our projections are, and then what's the amount available going into 2024. But I thought this would be a good opportunity just to provide the listing of all of the projects where they're currently budgeted. And then there's also a copy of the report that we filed in your packet as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Bill?
I just have a question. Is there like a deadline that these had to be spent by?
Yes, the funds all have to be obligated, meaning that we have commitments or contracts in place by the end of 2024. And then all money has to be fully out of our hands by 2026.
Okay, thank you.
I had a couple of questions. If you go to the next couple of pages where it shows each individual project, I noted that in the mom housing stability and food security programs, the status to completion is blank. And I don't know if that's a required thing to put in there. And then project number 2, the housing assistance for seniors.
Yeah, to answer the first one, that project was started under our initial report when they didn't have that field. And so they are now asking that on the newer projects, but there wasn't a way to go back and add that on the first one.
Great, sure. Then for the housing assistance for seniors, the total cumulative obligations is $890. And I'm hoping we're going to be spending a lot more this year. I noted the adopted budget on this page is 20,000, but I think that's the total budget, including the 2024 allocation. So I just flagged that as something that might need to be updated.
Yeah, I think there was 10,000 budgeted in each of 2022 and 2023. Out of the 2022 portion, only 890 was spent because there were also county funds available for several of these things. And the senior center was utilizing the county funds rather than using our ARPA allocation initially.
Okay.
At this point, those county funds have been starting to be used up. And so there are more items that are coming through in 2023. And I'll double check that total going forward.
Thank you. That's good to know. All right, any other questions for Bill? The ARPA funds?
Bill, I got a question.
Yeah.
What portion of the funds, for example, like with mom, goes to their actual overhead and operation for their staff and supporting them? Do we have a record of that?
Yeah, they did not charge anything for their overhead from these funds that we've paid them through ARPA. They all had that direct to the individual recipients.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, no further questions. We'll move on to the next item, which is request to reallocate $5,000 in ARPA funds for an online payment platform integration. Bill. Do you want to explain?
Yeah,
what this
I'm
is
just
all
trying to
about?
bring up this total. So the request is to reallocate $5,000 from the line 15 ARPA grant management and compliance, which would have the effect of lowering the 2023 budget from 15,000 to 10,000. What this is for is we have started implementing a new online payment platform, trying to replace a couple of existing ones that we have and consolidate and use a vendor that integrates with our financial software, which will allow us for live integration. So if we're getting somebody making a payment through the online portal, that will feed directly into our financial system rather than having to have staff manually key that in. This phase 2 integration will also allow us to utilize this system for our utility billing payments. And our largest areas where we're accepting electronic payments are utility billing, followed by tax collection. So having these additional integrations with the financial system will allow for those to come in, which for the utility billing, people would be able to go in, be able to see their billing amount, make their payment online, and have that flow directly into our system. So it's really an effort to try to improve efficiency and also help to improve the ease of use for the customer, because right now there are different payment systems for different departments, and they have to go in and go to the right one and navigate versus this system, which we're trying to get as many things as possible in one place. So you would go to online payments, select your payment type, and then go through and make that. For the funding source, the reason we feel that we can utilize that portion of ARPA funding is originally when we started implementing ARPA, we were operating under an interim federal rule that had very restrictive list of items that would qualify and additional reporting that would be required to verify that we were spending the money on approved purposes. With the final rule that came out, they had a kind of blanket allocation that if you received under $10 million in ARPA assistance, you qualified under what was considered a loss of revenue, meaning that everything can go into one category. And unless it is one of the items specifically prohibited, it's deemed approved. As a part of that, we don't feel that we'll need the same level of support from our consultant. And with the history that we have over the last year, we feel that we can reduce that administration line down. Happy for any questions either on the funding source or the express bill pay integration.
I have a question, Bill.
Yeah.
On the new squad car for the district police staff, are we looking at an EV vehicle or?
For the additional squad car, I believe that would be a hybrid vehicle. And Chief, are you?
I don't see the chief.
Yeah, I know that with the items that were discussed as part of the budget for 2023, they were looking at hybrid vehicles for the police fleet.
Go ahead, Dave.
Question regarding express bill pay is this is just an intermediary handoff service. This is not a service that does any cloud-based storage of the city data.
Correct. Yeah, it's a payment processor. So someone would go to our website, they would go to here, they would do their payment transaction. We don't receive their details of their account numbers or their credit card. We receive the payment from the processing company, and then that's what gets loaded into our financial software.
Okay.
Thank you, Alder IT guy, Lorman.
Just want to know where our data is being held.
Yeah, that's a good question. And kudos to you, Bill, for following through on our city's strategic plan. Specifically, the goal of using technology to improve service delivery and efficiency. This is a great way to do this, and I'm happy to invest in this. I would like to request that sometime this year, the staff review the costs and benefits of us eating the transaction fees. You know, if we do make a big splash about how you no longer have to pay a transaction fee or a convenience fee to pay your bills online, your utility bills and things like that, we might get more takers. And if it really can reduce our costs, that would be great. There is a cost to us for payments by check. So maybe improving the efficiency of the system could help us come out ahead. So does somebody want to make a motion to reallocate $5,000 in our fund?
I make a motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, check. All right, so the motion is to reallocate $5,000 in ARPA funds for an online payment platform integration. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, guys have it. We're going to jump briefly to the first miscellaneous item. This is the concept for funding a portion of private landscaping, including a retaining wall at 6524 Oakwood Place. This comes to us from the Public Works Committee. Since it is under miscellaneous, I don't know that we need a motion to discuss. So Sean, do you want to fill us in?
Sure. The brief update or background, and a couple of you know this from the Public Works Committee meeting, but there's a retaining wall that's built at least partially and maybe entirely on private property. It's difficult from the plans from 1967 to tell whether that was intended or not. But looking at the whole of kind of what's going on out there, it sure looks like that retaining wall was built by the city or by the city's contractor to support a sidewalk with a road expansion project. So I'm presuming that it's a city-owned wall with maintenance responsibilities. The wall is starting to lean. I don't know at what point it may tip over, but we have other walls in somewhat questionable condition, and most of them are manageable. I would say this is in that same ballpark, but the property owners approached us and said, really what they'd like to do is build new retaining walls and some enhanced landscaping to redo the backyard, provide some different visuals in the area. And that retaining wall then would move further away from the city sidewalk while still supporting the city sidewalk. We haven't, as far as I know, done something like this in the past. We've either proposed to a property owner that will remove the wall and regrade the yard, or pay half price for rebuilding the wall, at which point it becomes private when we can't tell what's going on. Or if it's a city wall, it's our maintenance responsibility. So in this case, the comparables that I was toying with are if the city had to rebuild the wall in the public right of way, we'd have to take the wall apart, remove the fence, remove the sidewalk, rebuild the wall in a slightly different location, and then rebuild the sidewalk somewhat closer to the curb. If we don't have permission to build it on private property. We could apply that money instead, I think, toward the private property owner with terms of an agreement, which the assistant city attorney had supported as a concept. And I think what we were talking about was, in terms of fairness, we could apply up to the costs that we as a city otherwise would have paid to rebuild the wall, rebuild the sidewalk, toward the homeowner taking that on as part of their landscaping, which would include then in perpetuity them supporting the sidewalk through either earth fill with some sort of slope and or a private retaining wall.
Thank you for that background. It is 7:24. I would like to wrap this up a few minutes before 7:30 so we can start our council meeting on time. Does anybody want to say anything at this time about the concept, or should we just wait until the council meeting?
Sean, could you, you so eloquently put it at the Public Works Committee, they said there's like 3 basic ways that things have been, this would be the third option in addressing a situation. You said in the past, you know, we would do, and you basically just did, but when you said it, it was put very distinctly in the meeting where it was like option 1, option 2, and this is the third way to approach it.
Kind of a new thing. I don't know that we've done this before, to say, well, we're presuming it's a city wall and we have responsibility for it. But if an owner wants to take that over in a different way, it seems that it would be reasonable and fair then for the city to contribute toward their project what we would have spent on our project, even if our timing is different.
Any further questions? I'll just say I'm concerned about setting a precedent because I think if we do this for one homeowner, we're going to have others come to us. I'm also thinking, you know, if this came up in 2025, when this area is set for sidewalk maintenance, and we identified sidewalk deficiencies and, you know, could negotiate at that time, I'd be a lot more comfortable with the idea of sharing the costs than I am right now. Especially given that, you know, we pulled a bunch of projects from Conservancy lands last year that, you know, some of which could be paid for with $10,000 or $12,000. So, but I do think this is a bigger discussion for the entire council to have. And so we'll see you in the
If
next
this were
meeting.
to come in the purview of the annual review of the sidewalks, does that look at the retaining wall or no? It's
Typically
just-
not.
right.
Yeah, that's really
Okay.
for maintenance of the walkability of a sidewalk,
Okay.
but not the support of it.
Right, okay.
Typically, when we do a retaining wall project, it's its own project. We would want that project to dovetail with sidewalks because we'd be about to have to rebuild them all.
All right, well, if you don't have any questions now, we are coming back to this in the council meeting. So it'll just be without a recommendation from finance at this time. All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned.